I'm Tim. Welcome to my channel. Going to be knocking out some exercise today. Today is chest day, and this is actually my 187th workout for the year. So 187, and if you're familiar with the police code, that's going to be police code for homicide. So maybe this will be a killer workout. We'll see. Um, yeah, so this is just a stream of my workouts, doing a body transformation this year. It's the basic intro. Uh, Basically, just trying to see how well I can do this year without taking any sort of supplements. So I'm not taking any like protein shakes, protein powders, no creatine, no BCAAs, no pre-workouts, nothing extra. Just trying to see how well I can do just with the nutrients that I eat and what I get from my food. And yeah, not opposed to supplements. I've taken them in the past. They work great. Secondary reason for not taking them is that one of my kids started preschool a while ago, and preschool is expensive. So cutting out supplements saves me at least $100 a month, $1,200 a year. And in this economy, every little bit helps. So going to be starting out with some 10 pounds, 4.53 kilogram dumbbells for bench press. Warm that up. Let's have some fun. Let's make this a killer workout. I actually learned the 187 code from the commercial for, or the preview for Samuel L. Jackson movie back in the day, where he played a school teacher that killed the bad students in his class. It's a very interesting message and way to improve your students' lives by murdering the bad ones. I'm not sure how well that movie would do today, but it was an interesting movie. Was that in that like time period where there was like, I think Lean on Me, you know, teacher turning around a troubled school. And I think Michelle Pfeiffer did one too. Um, where she's going in. I think I can't remember what Michelle Pfeiffer's movie was, but there were like a bunch of movies that came out about teachers helping in poor schools. And then Samuel L. Jackson's movie comes out, and it's just, you know, what better way to help than to kill your students that are bad gangsters? Very compassionate, very. Maybe when my kids are old enough to see 187, I'll tell them it's the sequel or prequel to Coach Carter. That'll be a fun one to explain. So he's killing the kids in this one, but pushing them to greatness in the other one through the power of basketball. So I'll tell you this. So, um, while doing this workout, I've I've kept like looking at myself in the videos later on, or even currently, and this whole time I've been like, man, my stomach looks so big in these videos. I don't understand why. Is the shirt? And then finally today, before coming out here, I usually drink like a giant cup of water, like a big cup of water, and I was like, oh, this is probably, you know, explains some of why your belly looks so big when you're working out. You like overhydrate with this giant glass of water, and that's just sitting in your stomach. Probably could contribute. I definitely could always lose weight and working on losing weight, but I feel like it might not be so prominent if I didn't down so much water before working out. Just a thought I had. All right, this is the 55-pound dumbbells. That's 24.95 kilograms. The group Funny or Die had a really funny Samuel L. Jackson sketch where it's all these parents getting upset with Samuel L. Jackson for their kids acting out and doing bad behaviors, and they're blaming him because of his movies. It was a pretty funny sketch. All right. This last set, I gripped the dumbbell in the wrong spot, so it was a little awkward. I'll make sure I get my hand in the right spot this time. Oh man. Right around 8, my nose started to itch. Very distracting. Call of Duty's gonna be out soon. Looking forward to playing. I gotta pre-order it. This will be the first time I've bought a game like Call of Duty before Christmas. And usually, so I'm usually the Christmas noob that everybody dunks on. Not this time. This time I'm gonna order it right away. Get it right away. This time will be different. And this time I'm gonna try to do something different too. I'm gonna try and look at the maps before I start playing them and see the layout. Usually in the past, I do the not so brilliant move of just fumbling through the map trying to figure it out as I'm getting shot at. But this time will be different. This time, I'll be ready. I want to get a KD ratio of at least 2 before I'm done with Call of Duty. I'm tired of barely carrying my weight in the game. I'd like to excel for once. All right, gonna go down to the 50 pounds. I need to be like more careful when I adjust my weights. Lately, the metallic paint, the coating like keeps coming off and cutting me. When I was setting up the 55 pounds before I started streaming, I got a nice little piece of metal stuck under my skin. I had to go pull out. I'm glad I had my tetanus shot recently. So yeah, that's a nice thing about like having health insurance is being able to go do things like get your tetanus shot on time instead of like having to worry about it anytime you cut yourself on rusted metal. Like you've done it already and you're good. When I was younger, I didn't have health insurance. That was a big stress point. Let's do this. 50 pounds. That's 22. What did I say? 22.67 kilograms. Again. All right. These weights aren't going to lift themselves. All right. All right, we're gonna go down to 40 pounds. It's 18.14 kilograms. There's an interesting thing that I find. I used to drink a lot more on a regular basis and like drink a lot more beer. I hate drinking juice, but I don't always like drinking water. And I don't like soda. Like, what's up, Tumza? So I always figured if I was drinking soda or drinking juice, the amount of calories, I might as well drink a beer. So I would drink beer as an alternative to water when I didn't feel like drinking water, which of course helped pack on pounds. But I'll tell you, the thing that helped me break that habit the most is like the carbonated water and getting the one that doesn't have like the high sodium in it. It's amazing how much easier it is to not drink beer when I can drink one of those. It's got just a little bit of flavoring in it, but it definitely helps. That being said, like I ran out um, this week for a couple of days. It just wasn't making it to the store, and the temptation to drink more beer or to buy beer like just shot through the roof. It's always funny when you think you've grown past a vice. It's really only because you have like you have so many steps in between you and that vice. But if you get rid of those steps, like the big one for me too, like if I stop working out, I instantly start drinking more. Which is another interesting one. If I'm working out, I don't feel as much inclination to drink. But take away working out, and it's so much harder not to. And I don't get drunk. I've never been like an alcoholic, like to that extent. But I do enjoy drinking. Um, but I think working out gives me the stress relief that I need and the release that I need, that you kind of also feel when you're drinking beer or drinking a fair amount. That and I was doing yard work. I feel like yard work, like, it permanently puts the idea of yard work and having a beer are so fixed in my mind. That was also part of it. Working in my yard, my body was like, hey, you're supposed to have a beer after this. You're missing the key step in motivation to fixing up your yard is the beer. What's going on with you, Tumza _665? You having a good Thursday? Getting ready for the weekend? I'm looking forward to this weekend. I worked really hard this week to keep my house clean and in good order and doing a lot of like extra stuff so I could earn a nice, relaxing weekend. It's hard to relax when you like look around and you see so many things that you're supposed to have fixed. Getting things done makes it a lot easier to relax. I'm tired. Miles to go before I sleep. I got that Eminem song that he sings to his daughter Haley stuck in my head. It's going through my YouTube shorts, just scrolling, and there are like a few videos of like Eminem coming up, and they kept playing that song. Now it's stuck in my head. It's funny is I didn't hear Eminem like consistently until I was like 17, and the first time I saw Eminem was or like first time I saw the movie 8 Mile. I was in the city called Balto, which is in Inner Mongolia, and a friend of mine who was Chinese was into Eminem. So we were like cruising around this Chinese city, having fun listening to Eminem. It was a lot of fun. I think it's just funny to go to the other side of the world to experience Eminem for the first time. That's the funniest. There's a funny thing about the way people portray the U.S. Um, in our relationships with other countries, like China, like how like China gets portrayed as an enemy in a future war, but how many of their people love watching American movies, listening to American songs, copying our style, like, and how many Chinese that I met that would, do anything to come to the United States, and yet for some reason, people insist on making us out to be enemies. And I was like, there's no reason for us to really be enemies. That's how I feel like about most of the world, that most of us would get along. It's like our leaders that have the biggest problems. At least that was my experience living in China. There's no reason for us to fight each other. I'll be really sad if that ever does come to pass. Because it would feel very senseless. All right, I'm gonna switch up to doing some chest flies before I run out of time. I'm out of time. All right, I got enough time. So I think traveling abroad is important to do. I think when you travel abroad, the narrative of this group of people is evil and that group of people is evil kind of starts to fall apart, whereas you start to see people as people and not just this identity that's been slapped on them by the head of a country somewhere, or the propagandists in one country spreading propaganda about another. And then you also, when you get out and you see propaganda in another country, when you come home, it's also easier to see propaganda in your own country. I was living in China, and I forget what village I was in. We were traveling around at the time, but there was this big bulletin board, and it said, on top of it said propaganda um, board. And I think that somebody, like, when they did the translation of trying to put English on there, um, and, they translated the new, instead of saying like news or bulletin, it was propaganda. But it made me look at it and I was like, oh man, like, they so clearly are manipulated here, and their propaganda is everywhere. And this like voice in my head said, but why do you assume your country's any different? Why are you assuming that you don't have propaganda? Why are you assuming that you've been told the truth? And that was kind of a big eye opener to me in that moment of like, oh yeah, like, do I really think that my politicians and media outlets are just so noble and pure that they wouldn't, ever lie to me for their gain? one of the big eye openers for me was also like living in China when we invaded Iraq. And when we invaded Iraq, the Chinese media was only playing what the state media for Iraq put out. And the Iraqis media was telling everybody that we were losing the war and we were getting annihilated. And the Iraqis were any moment now going to push the Americans back into the sea and we would be completely destroyed. And it was just this big hype. And fortunately, we had access to the regular, American media and news outlets still, so we knew that wasn't the case. But one of our friends, who was American, didn't know it wasn't on the internet, so he was only getting the Chinese media. And he came over one day during the invasion and was just devastated. And my dad was like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "I just can't believe we're losing so bad. I can't believe they're just destroying us. Like, why is this happening to us? We have so much better weapons and equipment. Like, how could we possibly be losing this bad?" My dad, showed him the U.S. media and the international media besides the Iraqis, and he was like left so much happier. But he thought we were just getting slaughtered in Iraq. And it was such an eye-opening experience that you could see how much your media controls how you see the world. There's this interesting, like, I forget which podcast I was listening to. It might have been Crack.com's podcast back in the day. But they were talking about how in the US and across the world, we only know things based off of movies. That's our biggest controlling, or our biggest dictator of how we see a different country we've never been to. And it talked about, like, picture Cairo, picture Egypt, and what do you see? And most people, they picture the three pyramids and the Great Pyramid backdrop to the desert, and that's what they think of as Egypt. But they don't know that there's like a giant city right next to the pyramids. And if you take a picture the other way, it looks completely different because we've only been given this forced perspective of the pyramids outlined on the desert, and how that changes how we see things. And you can do that with a lot of things, like ask somebody to picture a country or a people group and see what they say. Africa is a big one that people just don't really understand what Africa all entails. They think of like the savannah or like the Lion King kind of version of Africa, and maybe the jungles, but a lot not the jungles. They don't think about the mountains and the sea towns. They have this one perspective of a giant continent. Probably got excited there. And I think you have to be very careful about how you let your mind assume things about a group or a situation, because your mind takes like shortcuts and things. You're, it's like when you look at the moon, there's this famous optical illusion that when you see the moon on the horizon, it looks giant and huge, and then when it gets up in the sky, it looks like it's normal size. And it's just an illusion that your mind, without you telling it to, makes the moon look huge. And you can try and force your mind to put it back at the same shape, but because the moon is by perspective next to the hills, your mind thinks that it's closer, so it makes it bigger. And that's something your brain does without even telling you. So if you learn a bunch of things, or you form a solid opinion on what a country looks like and what its people are like, your brain is going to filter a lot of information through that assumption. And you're going to miss a lot about life and about how the world works because your brain takes shortcuts. And so, one way that it manages all the information that's in it, it just gives you a shortcut. There's an experiment, or they talk about how you're more likely to get into a car accident near your house. And they think that the reason is that your brain sometimes gives you old images of streets when you're not paying attention fully. And when you're near your house, you pay less attention because you're almost home. And that's why when they get in car accidents, people are like, oh, that car came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. Your mind just wasn't showing you that car. It was using an old image, kind of like how, like a video game generated image. So if your mind can do that same thing with people and societies and assumptions you make about people, societies, and countries. So you have to be very careful to not let that happen. how our how our minds can fool us. There's a fun one if you're ever interested. I would check it out. There's this experiment where a person sorry, you watch someone talking on a screen, and they'll usually say something like mama, 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 or baba, like over and over again. And when you close your eyes and you watch the same video, instead of saying like baba, you actually hear da da, da da. And what it is that they've taken the sound da da and overlaid it with an image of someone saying baba. Your mind it takes in the noise or the audio, looks at the visual, and changes the audio to fit what it's saying. Every time you close your eyes, it goes back to what it's supposed to be saying. But when you look at the image, your mind automatically alters what you're hearing. And it's this crazy thing that our bodies or our minds do, and how they filter the world or dictate the way we see the world. I really encourage you to go look it up and watch it for yourself. It's kind of mind blowing. But with that, I gotta go. I'm out of time. Thank you guys for coming by. Like I was saying, definitely go check out that video and kind of look at how your mind plays tricks on you and dictates how you see the world. And it's a huge, in my own life, it's been huge because it helps me realize, like, when I'm arguing with my wife, you know, sometimes they'll be like, oh, like you said this, and it'll be like, well, that's not what I said, and like, well, that's what I heard you say. Well, that's not what I said, and you start arguing about whether or not you said something. And for me, if my wife tells me that's not what I said, I recognize, like, hey, I may have heard it wrong. That may have not been what she said, and I can just stop that side of the argument. That's not necessary. It's not necessary for me to argue about what she said and what I heard. You know, I can just say, okay, I misheard you, and I'm sorry for that that problem in communication, and we can move on. But you can really waste a lot of time arguing about what you thought you heard versus what they said, and it's not a fruitful discussion in the slightest, or it's never been a fruitful discussion for me. So thank you so much for coming by, though. Appreciate it. Hope you have a good Thursday, and I'll get all set for the weekend. God bless you.